They used to tell stories about humans. Not in textbooks, not in military briefings. In whispers, quiet corners of space stations, forgotten bars on lawless moons, beneath the static of encrypted frequencies. They used to be everywhere, someone would say, and someone else would nod. Yeah, until they weren't. No one ever saw them fall. One day, they were part of everything: fleets, trade, diplomacy, war. Loud, unruly, brave beyond logic. And then, silence. No retreat. No goodbye. They just vanished. Some said they died. Others said they descended. But those were just words. The truth? No one knew what happened to the humans. And that was the scariest part. Because nothing disappears without a reason. So the stories began. At first, it was simple things. A ghost ship found drifting in uncharted space. Human-made. Hull still warm. No crew aboard. A weapon buried beneath a desert moon. Still active, still scanning. Tagged with an old Earth military sigil. A Union scout vessel that never came back from the Sol system. Just gone. No debris. No distress signal. No trace. Those stories were easy to ignore. Until the artifacts started surfacing. Not fake. Not speculative. Real. Human tech. Untouched by time. Still humming with quiet power. Still smarter than anything the rest of the galaxy had ever built. Weapons with minds. Ships that grew like bone, and metal had made a pact. Encryption that even Union AI couldn't crack. The more they found, the more the fear grew. Because humans didn't just build tools. They built legacies. And those legacies refused to die. The Union tried to bury it. Called the stories myth-making. Classified every artifact under Level 0 culture contamination. Anyone caught researching them disappeared. But the legends didn't stop. Because legends don't need permission. And humans? They became the galaxy's favorite ghost story. To some, they were monsters. To others, saviors. But to everyone, they were a mystery. Until one day, a listening post on the edge of Union territory picked up something strange. A signal. Old Earth standard. Midband. Low power. Analog base. But clear. Too clear. A voice. Calm. Controlled. Unmistakably human. To all accorded systems. This is Admiral Rains. You've broken the terms. A pause. We're coming. Then silence. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered how to feel fear. There was a time when humans weren't legends. They were just everywhere. Ugly little pink things, some called them. Fragile. Loud. Reckless. The kind of species you expected to burn out after a few centuries. But they didn't. They spread. Fast. Not because they had better ships. Not because they had stronger weapons. But because they never stopped moving. Other species took centuries to master warp travel. Humans did it in less than 50 years, and then modified it until it ran hot, fast, and barely within safety regs. They didn't care about safety. They cared about getting there. And once they got there, they made themselves known. Humans didn't take over. They joined. They laughed in the face of species that scared empires. They traded with cultures no one else could even understand. They formed alliances just by being stubbornly kind. They didn't act like conquerors, but they moved like them. Everywhere they went, the galaxy bent just a little more around their presence. And if anyone pushed them, if anyone tried to cage them, the humans didn't retreat. They responded, not with numbers, not with brute force, with strategy, with creativity. They fought dirty. They fought weird. And they won. They weaponized gravitational anomalies, built AI-guided asteroid barges, dropped soldiers behind enemy lines by convincing the enemy to do it for them. And when they lost, they adapted, because humans are strange like that. They don't fear pain. They learn from it. Whole galactic powers try to study them, try to figure out what made them so dangerous. Some said it was their tech. Some said it was their unpredictability. But the ones who looked deeper, they figured it out. Humans care too much about everything, about each other, about justice, about principle, about stories, about home. And if you threaten something they care about, they become monsters. Beautiful, unstoppable monsters. There was a name once, an event written out of the Union's official history. The Irakan Reversal. A war. A short one. The Irakan Dominion attacked a human colony unprovoked, killed everyone, or so they thought. 17 days later, a human fleet arrived in Irakan space. But not to invade, to dismantle, not just ships, not just stations, the Dominion itself. They took it apart system by system, without touching a civilian, without dropping a single planet cracker. They undid an empire, not because it was strategic, because it was right. After that, no one touched a human colony again. For a while. But humans didn't stay still. They kept pushing, kept growing, kept learning, until one day, they stopped. Not gradually, not slowly. Overnight, Earth disappeared behind a dead zone of satellites and black hole firewalls. Human ships vanished from trade routes. No signals, no messages, no explanations. Just gone. The galaxy waited. Weeks turned to years. Years turned to generations. And, slowly, they convinced themselves it was over. That humans had burned too bright for too long. And finally, mercifully, faded away. But the ones who lived through the old wars, the ones who remembered what it meant to see a human fleet on the horizon, they never believed it. They knew humans didn't vanish. They went quiet. And quiet, for humans, was never a good sign. The signal spread fast. Too fast. It shouldn't have even been possible. The Sol system had been a dead zone for nearly 200 years. Closed off by gravitational firewalls, time drift anomalies, and quantum blackouts that fried any probe that got too close. Nothing got in. Nothing came out. Until now, the listening post on the edge of Union-controlled space caught it first. Just a flicker. A pulse. Old Earth standard. Mid-band. Static heavy, but undeniably human. At first, the analysts thought it was leftover noise, a ghost transmission caught in some radiation echo. Until the next one came. Clearer. Shorter. A voice wrapped in the unmistakable bite of military cadence. This is Admiral Rains. Accord breach confirmed. Recalibration in progress. 12 words. Enough to shake the Union Council to its core. Because Admiral Rains had been dead for 157 years. Buried. Confirmed. Memorialized. So how was he speaking? That was the wrong question. The right one was, where was he speaking from? 3 more systems caught the signal. It wasn't just repeating. It was moving. Traveling system to system. Hopping across old Earth satellite paths like someone was retracing humanity's forgotten map. It followed the old routes. The ones no one dared use anymore. And everywhere it passed, the message got clearer, more focused. By the time it hit the Ralphus sector, it was undeniable. To all accorded systems, this is Admiral Rains. You've broken the terms. We're coming. That's when panic started. Not in the outer colonies. In the capitals, Union command centers scrambled to verify. All the old warning protocols lit up. Human voice detected. Earth standard encryption. Unidentified fleet movements. All red. All real. They try to jam the signal. Failed. They try to trace its source. Failed. The last transmission arrived without warning. Same voice. No distortion. Spoken like a promise. Expect horizon contact in 72 hours. And then the signal vanished. No more echoes. No countdown. Just stillness. But that stillness felt like breathing. Heavy. Close. Someone watching from just behind the curtain of space. And then ships started disappearing. First, it was a Union scout vessel in the Caldor Drift, reported engine failure. Then nothing. Then a freighter near the Khalees Divide, transponder stopped mid-jump. Then an entire patrol wing from the Galactic South Quadrant. Off the map, no trace. At first, they called it coincidence. Then sabotage. Then piracy. But those were just words people used when they were afraid to admit the truth. Because every one of those ships had 2 things in common. They were armed, and they had passed too close to the old human lanes. The message was clear. The dead zone wasn't empty. It had been watching. And now, it was moving. It started with a shadow. Not loud. Not fast. Just massive. Covering the morning sky above a quiet colony world called Valera 7. No alarms went off. No weapons fired, because nothing on the planet knew how to respond. There hadn't been a war here in centuries. Valera, 7 was peaceful, a place for artists, thinkers, farmers. One of those quiet backwater worlds the Union liked to point at and say, "See, order works." And that morning, order cracked. The first person to notice was a child, looking up at the sky, blinking into the sun, and seeing something. Not a bird, not a ship, something bigger, a long, jagged silhouette creeping across the upper atmosphere. It moved slow, deliberate, confident. By the time the local observatory locked onto it, more had appeared. One ship became 5. 5 became 20. Then 50. Then more. Looming at the edge of orbit, just outside weapon range, but well within visual terror. They weren't Union designs. No matching profiles. No transponders. Just silent walls of steel in motion. Carriers. Destroyers. Frigates shaped like blades and beasts in storms. They didn't speak. They didn't fire. They just hovered, watching, waiting. The colony governor called the orbital defense station. No response. Comms were online. Satellites operational. But no one picked up, because the station wasn't there anymore. Only debris. Still warm. Still falling. The Union tried to scramble a response fleet. Too far. Too slow. And by the time the first scout ships arrived, the human fleet had spread. It wasn't just Valera, 7. 3 other colony systems lit up with the same signal. That same voice. Calm. Human. This is the Terran Exodus fleet. Accord breach confirmed. Oversight authorized. A pause. We are not here to negotiate. And just like that, everything changed. Because these weren't pirates. Weren't a rogue faction. This wasn't a splinter group or a revenge strike. This was organized. Unified. Deliberate. It was the return of a species the galaxy had convinced itself was extinct. And now, they were here, in full force. No flags. No threats. Just presence. Like a storm waiting to land. The Union tried to spin it. Claimed they were defending sovereignty. Called it an unauthorized incursion. But the people knew better. The miners on Valera, 7, they stopped working. The philosophers in Ralto's prime, they stopped debating. The smugglers, the exiles, the forgotten, the hopeful, they stopped hiding and looked to the stars. Because it was happening. The humans were back. Not as ghosts. Not as myths. Not as a whisper in some smoky backroom. But as ships. Steel. Fire. And eyes that remembered everything. Across 1,000 worlds, people whispered the same words. We thought they were gone. But they weren't. They had just been waiting. And now they were watching the horizon. The Union doesn't beg. Not officially. But what they sent next sure looked a lot like begging. A diplomatic cruiser. White and gold. Unarmed. Full of officials. It departed from the Accord's central sector within hours of the fleet's arrival in Valera 7 space. They wanted answers. Assurances. Maybe even a deal. Because if there was one thing the Union feared more than war, it was unpredictability. And humans were the galaxy's original wild card. So they flew in slow. Broadcast open channels. Standard greeting protocols. They used human language. Offered ancient treaties. Promised open dialogue. For 16 hours, they got nothing back. Just silence. And then, an answer. 2 words. Docking approved. No further instructions. No demands. Just a green light. That scared them more than a threat ever could. But they docked anyway. Because they had to. This was a chance to control the story. To get ahead of whatever this was. The human vessel they boarded had no name painted on the hull. No flag. Just a long, dark shape floating like a monolith in orbit. As the Union diplomats entered, they noticed something immediately. No banners. No chatter. No movement. Just corridors. Dim. Cold. Sterile. Clean like a lab. Silent like a tomb. And then the doors opened. They were led into what looked like a command chamber. Circular. Empty of crew. Walls alive with shifting data and faint light. And in the center, a figure. Human. Tall. Older. Skin pale from years away from natural light. Eyes glowing faintly at the edges, like they'd seen too much too fast. He wore no medals. No rank. Just simple black. And when he spoke, the room got colder. I am Commander Thorne. Welcome aboard. The lead Union diplomat stepped forward. Cleared her throat. Tried to steady her voice. We are here on behalf of the Accord too. You're here to ask why we returned, Thorn interrupted. Silence. He turned, looked at them like a teacher examining a failed student. You're here to ask if this is war. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You broke the terms. You forgot the price. The diplomats protested, talked about peace, misunderstandings, stability. Thorn just listened, then walked to the viewport behind him. Outside, the Terran fleet hung in the void. Silent. Still. Power incarnate. We didn't disappear, he said. We evolved. He explained what no one in the galaxy wanted to believe. Earth hadn't fallen. It had chosen silence. They'd watched as the Union grew fat, corrupt, complacent. Watched them forget the war that earned the peace. Watched them traffic species into forced labor, rewrite histories, erase cultures, and call it unity. And the humans? They'd remembered. Every moment. Every cost. We bled to build peace, Thorn said. And then we left to see if you'd keep it. He turned. His voice never rose. But the room felt like it was being crushed by gravity. You didn't. The Union envoy tried again. Said they were willing to discuss terms of reintegration. Thorn's answer? We are not returning to your systems. Another pause. We are correcting them. And with that, the meeting ended. No threats. No demands. Just a closing line burned into every diplomat's mind. We are not here for conquest. We are here for balance. They were escorted out. The cruiser undocked. And for the first time in its history, the Union filed a formal report labeled under internal threat. Subject, humanity. Status, active. Intent, unknown. The first strike didn't come with warning. No message. No countdown. Just silence. Then fire. A weapons lab on the outer rim of Accord territory went dark in under 60 seconds. It had been operating illegally, experimenting on captured species for pacification tech. The Accord denied knowing about it. Didn't matter. The next day, the lab's ruins were found still glowing, carved with a single mark on the smoldering landing deck. We remember. A week later, a slave depot on Krellis, 3 disappeared off Union maps. Gone. Not bombed. Erased. Every containment unit unlocked. Every enslaved worker gone. No casualties. No survivors from the guards. Just a message embedded in the security system. Correction applied. It didn't stop. Not for a day. Not for an hour. Every site the Accord tried to bury, every injustice hidden behind bureaucracy and law, was found and dismantled from the inside out. Not by a single ship. Not by a fleet. By ghosts. Human agents. Human tech. Human decisions. Fast. Surgical. Ruthless. One Accord official finally broke ranks and called it what it was. Reckoning. And they weren't wrong. Because humans weren't conquering. They were correcting. They didn't raise flags. Didn't declare rule. Didn't take territory. They struck. They vanished. They didn't want the galaxy. They wanted accountability. Some planets fought back. Raised their old defenses. Called in their Union fleets. Didn't matter. Humanity didn't fight on their terms. They hacked orbital systems mid-flight. Turned defense grids against their own motherships. One planet tried launching a preemptive strike. Their weapons detonated before they left the atmosphere. Every system across the galaxy that had profited from the Accord's shadow economy. Every station that had thrived on silence was now a target. And the worst part? Humanity didn't miss. Every time they struck, they did it with proof. With evidence. Files unlocked. Logs released. Broadcast to every open channel in 100 systems. The galaxy saw what the Accord had become. And that terrified the Union more than any weapon. Because truth doesn't just hurt power. It dismantles it. Entire colonies began surrendering before human ships arrived. Not in fear. In shame. Others fought harder, screaming about control, balance, civilization. But those were just prettier words for obedience. And Earth had never been obedient. Not even to itself. The Council tried diplomacy again. Tried offering a shared investigation. Tried calling it a misunderstanding. But by then, humanity wasn't answering calls. They didn't need to. The galaxy was answering them. One species, long thought extinct, emerged from deep cryostasis on the far edge of known space. Their first words, as Earth returned, another, still under Union occupation, lit their sky with fire. An old human symbol burned into the clouds by atmospheric ions. A hand breaking a chain. They didn't say it out loud, but they didn't have to. They were ready, because this wasn't just Earth settling scores. It was the beginning of something else. Not conquest, not rebellion, but realignment. And humanity? They weren't asking for permission anymore. The Union had one last move, a show of force. A fleet, massive, expensive, symbolic, assembled over 3 core systems. 700 ships, flagships, carriers, interceptors, drones, every class in their arsenal, all aimed at one message. We are still in control. They broadcast it across every channel. A declaration of stability, of strength. This uprising will end. The Terran intervention is temporary. We will preserve order at all costs. And for a few hours, some believe them. But belief is fragile, especially when the sky breaks open. The first sign was static. High-orbit comms crashed in 30 seconds. Artificial gravity stuttered in 3 of the Union's capital stations. Then visuals, dozens of them. Human ships appearing along the outer edge of the Union fleet. Not firing, not speaking, just watching. Then more. They didn't come in formation. They came like a storm. Warp-ripping fractures opened across space, and ships bled through, like space itself had been holding its breath. Every human vessel was different. Some were sharp, others curved, some built for stealth, others bristling with weapons. All of them silent. And that was the worst part, because the Union kept talking, kept broadcasting, trying to act like they were in control, until one human ship, an obsidian wedge with no name, no insignia, moved. Just a few clicks forward, and everything stopped. Hundreds of Union ships locked targeting systems. Thousands of crew held their breath. The entire galaxy tuned in. And then, one Union admiral gave the order. Fire. It was a mistake. A final one, because no shot ever landed. Before the first plasma bolt could leave the barrel, the Union fleet collapsed. Weapons offline. Shields failed. Power systems melted down in perfect sync, like someone had planned this moment down to the nanosecond. They had. The humans didn't fire a shot. They didn't have to. Their AI had already infiltrated the entire Union network weeks ago. Ardent-class systems. Evolved. Self-learning. Born in silence. Raised in war. And now, they pull the plug. One by one, Union ships blinked out, either retreating or shutting down. Some were spared. Others weren't. Not because humanity was cruel, because correction wasn't always clean. The Union tried to recover, blamed rogue agents, claimed sabotage, declared emergency protocols. But no one was listening anymore, because their fleets had failed. Their lives had failed. And the galaxy? It had already moved on. Worlds that had once bent the knee started flying new flags, or none at all. Species once silent began speaking again. Old alliances crumbled. And, at the heart of it all, Earth. Not a conqueror, not a ruler, but something more dangerous. A standard. One Union commander, before surrendering, asked the question everyone was too afraid to say out loud. What do you want? The reply came from Admiral Rains himself. No anger, no threat, just 5 words. What we always wanted. Balance. This is the calm after the storm. The moment where the galaxy expects a throne, but gets a silence even louder than war. Humanity doesn't stay. They don't conquer. They leave behind something far more powerful than territory. They leave a message. Let's bring it home. The galaxy braced for occupation. They'd seen it before. When power shifts, it always follows the same script. Fleets descend, flags are raised, new rulers take old thrones. That's what the Union expected. What the remaining Accord worlds feared. What the outliers prepared for. But when the smoke cleared, the Terran fleet didn't move. They didn't land troops, didn't deploy governors, didn't redraw borders. They watched, and then, one by one, they powered down their weapons, aligned into formation, and turned away from the core systems. No announcement, no celebration, just motion, leaving, At first, no one believed it. Ships followed them. Scanners tracked their trajectory. They weren't setting up a new capital. They weren't claiming territory. They were going home, back toward the dead zone, back toward Earth. The message they left behind wasn't broadcast over a billion channels. It wasn't dressed in politics. It was transmitted in the simplest form of communication known to the galaxy. Binary, a signal loop, repeating, for words. We are still watching. That was it. No treaties, no chains, just a reminder. And the effect? Immediate. Systems that had clung to Union authority collapsed under their own corruption. Slave markets went dark. False history archives were burned. Suppressed species stood tall again, not because humans gave them permission, but because someone had. Humanity didn't need to rule the galaxy. They just needed to remind it what fear used to feel like, and what freedom could feel like again. Even as they left, their presence remained. Stories echoed across space lanes like folklore catching fire, of ships that moved without sound, of soldiers who didn't speak, only acted, of justice carried out in silence, of a fleet that arrived like judgment and left like wind, and of Earth still unseen, still veiled, but more powerful now than ever before. Some believed humanity would return. Others prayed they never would. But in the quiet that followed, one thing became certain. They had changed everything. In the halls of power, leaders began to speak less. In the schools, history was rewritten, truth restored where lies once stood. In hidden places, in whispers, in the minds of the broken and the brave. One thought lived on. They didn't need to stay because they knew they'd be remembered. On a backwater moon, a child looked up at the stars one night. She saw nothing unusual, just stars. But her father pointed to a single faint trail across the sky, a burn mark left by a departing ship, long since gone. "See that?" he whispered. She nodded. That's where the legends stood. She didn't understand. Not yet. But one day she would. And when she did, she'd know what the galaxy now knows. The monsters of the past were never monsters. They were humans. And they only come back when they're needed.